So welcome once again, everybody. For anybody who doesn't know me, my name's Vidyaraja. And I'll be giving a talk to begin with, and then we hopefully will have some time to break up into discussion groups. Vajrapriya is going to magic for those online after the talk. And then we'll finish with a wee period of meditation. So I'll crack straight in. This session we're looking at the 5 jhanas, the 5 archetypal forms that embody the 5 principal aspects of the enlightened mind. So these are images of our true nature that we can engage with. And in so doing, the whole process of moving towards enlightenment is speeded up and made much easier. It also makes it a whole lot more fun. And these 5 Buddhas are usually represented in a mandala pattern. And this is not intended as some kind of dogma to believe in, but as a very practical way of engaging our imaginations and speaking directly to our depths. So we have 5 ways of approaching what is literally inconceivable, 5 doorways through which we can come home. So tonight we come to the Buddha Amitabha, who presides in the western direction, and he's the head of the Padma, or the lotus family. That includes a large number of figures, including Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of compassion, and Padmasambhava, the precious guru. So the symbolism of the lotus has its roots in the mud. It grows out of the mud and it rises up through the murky water, and it unfolds its petals in the radiant sunlight. So it's a natural image of growth and unfoldment. And the petals are pristine. They're free of the mud of samsara, if you like, free of the murk of samsara. So we can perhaps see ourselves as a bud pushing up through the water, drawn by the sun of enlightenment to our full innate potential. This figure here isn't red, but Amitabha is usually a deep, rich red, ruby red colour. So entering the red spectrum of the mandala. So red's the colour of warmth, vitality, passion. It's the colour of attraction. We're told it's the first colour that babies can recognise. And significantly for us here, it's also the colour of the setting sun. West is where, the western direction is where the sun sets. So during the day, we can't normally look at the sun. It would damage our eyes. But as the sun sets, it becomes something very soft and inviting and entrancing. And if we're by the sea, say, watching the sunset, it becomes something quite splendid and majestic as well. And traditionally, at least, from a traditional point of view, Sunset's also the time when we can let go of the busyness of the day. We can let go of the busyness of everything we've been doing, and we can relax and enter into a more tranquil space. So, with the splendour and majesty of the setting sun, we can feel refreshed and invigorated and relaxed all at the same time. And it's also a time, with the light of the setting sun, when things start to become a bit more mysterious, even a bit more magical, and we're not quite so sure where the sea ends and the sky begins, for example. And there's this, everything becomes bathed in this kind of warm, low glow of light, and becomes quite mysterious. So this is the realm we're entering into. It's the kind of realm we're entering into. And here we meet the Buddha seated in meditation, seated cross-legged in meditation, his hands in the meditation mudra, in the dhyana mudra, as it's called, and on his lips, a half smile. So Amitabha is the Buddha of infinite light. He embodies transcendental love. And it may be a bit of a surprise to learn that our true nature is infinite love. This isn't normally how we experience ourselves. Normally, we experience ourselves as isolated and separate individuals. And with this comes a sense of a lack of completeness. Rather than experience ourselves as infinite love, our tendency then is very much to look for love outside of ourselves. I love you and I feel incomplete without you. If we have an attitude of possession, it's quite likely we'll never be satisfied for very long. There's always been something not quite right about the other person. Our passion burns up and then we go cold. We lose interest. It's a very common experience. I'm sure we've all experienced this. 1 week we're full of passion, and the next minute it's all gone. We just don't care anymore, not interested anymore. And if we're not careful, well, even if we are careful, we might end up with a kind of pattern of looking for a soulmate somewhere else. Maybe this time we'll find the right person. Maybe this time this person will do it for us. This time this will work out. This time we'll get it right. So underneath all that passion, we might feel we don't really have any real heart at bottom. Divorce courts can be brutally cold places. When we first learn to do the Metabhavana meditation, it's a very common experience to not realise we don't really have any sense of metta at all, any real feeling of metta at all, even for ourselves. It's a strange situation. Here we are, the pinnacle of evolution, the highest species on the planet, and yet we somehow need validating in some way. We think we need more than we have. So what will do it? What will do it? Becoming a millionaire? Finding the perfect partner? Winning the Nobel Prize? Having a makeover, a new me? These are all ways we have of trying to magnetize the world so that we get what we want. We get the love that we want. And when our love falls short of what we want, we're usually to be found complaining one way or other, if not to other people, then to ourselves. So there's a poem by Stevie Smith called Heartless. I think kind of captures this. Heartless. My little dog is called Heartless. His nature is heartless. Yet when he barks, he cries, heartless, heartless. And this is a complaint. So perhaps he will improve, one day learn to love. Heartless, I call. But he barks again, heartless, heartless, only to complain. I hope he finds where it is love is lacking and stops barking. So the poison associated with Amitabha, the poison Amitabha is transforming, is craving, longing, compulsive lust where we don't feel we have any choice in the matter. It's misdirected passion. There's absolutely nothing wrong with passion. We need all the passion we can find. It's just that it's backing the wrong horse. It's going to a false refuge. Underneath, there's a sense of isolation, loneliness, disconnection. Craving comes from a sense we don't have everything that we want, everything that we need. And adverts, of course, play on this all the time. We'll be the perfect mother if we have the right brand of wash powder or the right tin of processed peas. And our family will love us. This is a message, isn't it? Our family will love us if we buy this product. Or we'll be irresistibly attractive if we have a particular car or a particular brand of hairspray or whatever it happens to be. As with Ratnasamada, there's a compulsion to consume. But here the motivation is somewhat different. In Ratnasamada's sphere, we're seeking possessions for a sense of status or security. We want solidity. We want to feel solid ground under our feet. So we gather in the possessions. We're concerned there with the earth element. And we perhaps don't perhaps even particularly enjoy the possessions we have. It's not the enjoyment that we really feels important, it's the having them. It's a sense of solidity and security that they give us. When we turn to Amitabha, we're concerned rather with the fire element. So here there's a whole element of glee or gusto involved, a great deal of anticipation and excitement. We can't wait to get our hands on the new whatever it is. Undo the shrink wrap, get our hands on it, whatever it is, a new gadget or a new phone or whatever, find out what it can do. There's a whole kind of way of gusto, of enjoyment we're seeking in whatever it is we get hold of. So we can hardly contain our excitement for the new thing, whatever it is, the new product or the new partner or the new place where it's all happening. So we're clingy, we're grasping. We can become obsessed or addicted. We can get lost, we can get caught up in fantasy, wish fulfillment. We can become codependent. If we're unformed as people, We may even be susceptible to various cults of a religious or political nature. We're so desperate to belong, we're so desperate to believe, to fuse. We may be the life and soul of the party, but we don't meet anybody in any real sense. We're concerned with appearances rather than substance, concerned with glamour rather than any real intimacy. We may be generous, but there'll be ulterior motives. We want something back, and what we want back is love. What we want is love. So here's another poem by Stevie Smith, and this you might know, called Not Waving but Drowning. Nobody heard him, the dead man, but still he lay moaning. I was much further out than you thought, and not waving, but drowning. Poor chap, he always enjoyed larking, and now he's dead. It must have been too cold for him. His heart gave way, they said. Oh, no, no, no. It was too cold always. Still the dead one lay moaning. I was much too far out all my life, and not waving, but drowning. So all this longing for a love that's outside of ourselves is based on an illusion. This is what the Buddha tells us. It's brought about through our thought processes and emotions that lie underneath. It's just, in the end, a story that has no basis in ultimate reality. We're not actually separate, isolated individuals, whatever our mind seems to tell us. And deep down somewhere, we know this. And we want to break the illusion that we are so, that we are separate. And to experience a sense of wholeness and completeness, the wholeness and completeness that is embodied in the figure of Amitabha. So Amitabha's emblem is the peacock. In Indian mythology, peacocks eat poisonous snakes, and they transmute the poison into those gorgeous feathers with their lustrous eyes. So we take the poison of craving and transform it through the power of Amitabha into beauty and wisdom. So how's this so? Well, perhaps I need to say something about the power of Amitabha. Of all the Buddhas, he's the most associated with what we call other power rather than self-power. With self-power, we're trying to get what we want and eliminate what we don't want. And we can put this to very good use. We can develop mindfulness, we can develop metta, we can practice the precepts and so on. But as we know, this isn't easy. I think I can say that. I'll say it for myself, it isn't easy. And moreover, there's always at least a subtle sense of a me that's doing it, as opposed to other people. It's me developing metta for other people, for the world, or whatever. So with other power, well, we let Amitabha do it for us. We take the me out of the equation. We surrender to our true nature. We let our innate love and wisdom organise our life. and we'll find Amitabha does a far better job of it than we ever could. We'll be far happier for it than if we try and do it ourselves. So as we surrender ourselves to Amitabha, our sense of a fixed and separate self begins to dissolve. Ultimately, we become the bliss of love. Whatever happens, whatever anybody else says or does, we abide in bliss, in love. And this links very much with what we call bodhicitta, the heart of enlightenment. It's not a gritting of the teeth, loving everybody despite everything. It's a liberation of having no separate selfhood to promote or defend. So I should say that other power is not other power as opposed to self-power. Other power is a transcendence of the distinction between self and other. It requires our participation. We have to make an effort to practice, but we allow the power of Amitabha to take us over. It's a bit like surfing. If we go surfing, it might take quite a bit of effort to get out there. Particularly if to drive down to Cornwall or something, or fly to Californian coast, even better. It takes quite a bit of effort to get out there. But then once we're out there and we get on the surfboard, then we surrender to the waves. And it's exhilarating, isn't it? It's well worth all the effort to get out there, just to experience that exhilaration of surrendering to the waves. The difference with Amitabha is that with Amitabha, we're entering a two-way relationship. So what we have is a kind of playful dance. We allow him, as far as possible, to make the moves. We call on Amitabha and allow Amitabha to work through us. We allow our own intrinsic love and wisdom to work through us. The infinite light of Amitabha begins to manifest through our finite bodies. So, how does this kind of work? How does it work on the ground, so to speak? Well, one key element is that we find ourselves with a bigger container for our emotions, a bigger container for our experiences. Normally we just get caught up in how we're feeling, in our emotions. There's no space inside our minds. We crave something and then we act upon it. If we have a bigger container, then there's just the craving. We can experience the craving without acting upon it. There's just the craving, there's just the longing. We don't need to act out, there's no big deal. And we find we crave something 1 minute and it's gone the next. And the same works for other emotions as well. Amitabha is not just about craving. It works for anger, say, as well. Usually with anger, underneath the anger, there's some kind of painful experience, isn't there? So if we get hold of the painful experience, we get hold of the emotion underneath the anger and let go of the anger. So we think we're a fixed subject seeking a fixed object, but it's not really like that. In that spaciousness, we can let go and we can find another way of being. So I remember once talking to Bhante, to Sangharakshita. This was quite a while ago now, quite a long time ago. And I was in a dilemma over something. I was in a dilemma over whether to move somewhere. And this kind of filled my whole mind, filled my whole universe, this kind of question. Should I or shouldn't I? And so I told him about it, and he just kind of took it like a little pebble and dropped it into the kind of ocean of his mind. And I just kind of watched it kind of dissolve in front of me. I watched the kind of problem dissolve in front of my eyes, as it were. And what he brought was a bigger perspective. We enter into a bigger world, liberated from a contracted perspective. And this is essentially what in Buddhism we mean by compassion. This is what the Bodhisattva does. This is what we can aspire to do for others, ourselves. It's not a running around exhausting ourselves as an isolated, separate individual trying to help other isolated, separate individuals, but having a mind that sees the emptiness of the distinction. So a poem this one's by the Japanese monk Ryokan. When I think about the misery of those in this world, their sadness becomes mine. Oh, that my monk's robe were wide enough to gather up all the suffering people in this floating world. Nothing makes me more happy than Amida Buddha's vow to save everyone. Amida being the Japanese for Amitabha. In terms of the seasons, Amitabha is associated with the coming of spring. It's a time of new life, when the ice of winter melts and everything flows. The first flowers begin to appear, everything becomes fresh, everything feels fresher, everything seems to waken up. We can feel renewed, we can begin to drop our defences in the increasing warmth and sunshine. Our hearts begin to open again with the coming of spring. The Zen folk call this beginner's mind. You realise that everything that you know is really just an idea. It actually has no intrinsic reality. So then every moment is a fresh experience. Every breath is a first breath. Another Japanese poet, Issa, he has a haiku. The snow is melting and the village is flooded with children. So this can go deep. This can go deep. After a loss or trauma, we can grieve and heal and learn to love the world again. So this is priceless, in fact. I'm sure I don't need to say that the world needs this more now than ever. So through the power of Amitabha, our lives can be transformed. If we transform craving, if we no longer experience ourselves as a fixed and separate entity, well, what are we left with? Well, what we're left with is communication. After the Buddha was enlightened, he went from place to place and engaged in communication with people. He talked to anybody. He talked to kings, he talked to courtesans, he talked to bandits, he talked to robbers. We're bound together by communication. In place of craving and grasping, we thus have union. We recognise, in fact, the union that is in fact already there. So we speak to each other kindly and truthfully and respectfully. And I'm sure we all know these stories from the Pali Canon Song. The Buddha's an exemplar par excellence of communication, how to communicate with all kinds of people. So we can in fact see the whole of life as communication. Nothing is separate, even from a rational scientific viewpoint, even from a rational scientific perspective. Implicit in the Big Bang is the fact that every particle in the universe is related to every other particle. And we're told that when two particles were created from the same source, they behave like one particle, even if they're at opposite ends of the universe. So if we move a particle at this end of the universe, its brother or sister particle at the other end of the universe will know and respond. Apparently this can be measured. Likewise, a tree is not a static, fixed and separate entity. It's growing or decaying, it changes its shape in the breeze. It communicates with the earth, drawing up nutrients. It cannot exist on its own. If we think we're separate from others, it's us versus everyone else, well, we're going to feel very lonely. Life's going to feel meaningless. Craving isolates us, communication connects us. Craving isolates us, communication connects us. The idea of a separate self is ultimately a fiction. The meing of me and the youing of you arise together. The meing of me and the youing of you arise together. The idea of our being separate, that we have something to promote or defend, is a product of our conceptual minds, not actually what is fundamentally going on. Beyond our conceptual mind is the reality that we are all interconnected, that we arise together. We arise in this very moment together now. Essentially, our experience becomes aesthetic. We still have practical, utilitarian things to do. We still have the rent to pay. We still have the mortgage to pay or whatever. But all that takes place within the bigger context of the aesthetic, within the aesthetic dimension, we could say. We're no longer confined to a limited idea of ourselves. There's the classic poem by Edward Thomas called Adelstrop that I think illustrates this. In the summer of 1914, not long before the sudden outbreak of the First World War, Edward Thomas was returning by train from London to stay with his friend Robert Frost, the American poet Robert Frost, who was living in Ledbury. And the literary people have worked out that he caught the 10:20 express from Paddington non-stop to Oxford. But it then stopped at this tiny village, really, cluster of houses in Gloucestershire called Adelstrop. The station's no longer there. Dr. Beeching did away with it in the 1960s. And Thomas wrote in his notebook, "Then we stopped at Adelstrop. Through the willows could be heard a chain of blackbird songs at 12:45, and one thrush and no man seen, only a hiss of engine letting off steam. So this was in the days before double glazing and soundproofing, and you could actually hear the countryside as you travelled through it. If you're as old as I am, you can just about remember this. So a few months later, and the war well underway, Thomas was thumbing through his notebook and he came across this entry, and he wrote a poem, Adelstrop. Yes, I remember Adelstrop, the name, because one afternoon of heat, the express train drew up there, unwontedly. It was late June. The steam hissed. Someone cleared his throat. No one left, and no one came on the bare platform. What I saw was Adelstrop, only the name, and willows, willow herb and grass, and meadow sweet, and haycocks dry. No whit less still and lonely fair than the high cloudlets in the sky. And for that minute, a blackbird sang close by, and round him, mistier, farther and farther, all the birds of Oxfordshire and Gloucestershire. So we begin with a mind the size of Edward Thomas arriving at Adelstrop. Oh, train pulls up. Oh, Adelstrop. Oh, that's what we begin with, just naming the place. And we end with a mind the size of 2 counties, all the birds of Oxfordshire and Gloucestershire. So he becomes what he sees as his imagination takes over. I'm sure he can't have physically heard all the birds of Oxfordshire and Gloucestershire, but his imagination did. His imagination with a capital I did. So for that minute, as the blackbird sang, the idea Edward Thomas had of himself was temporarily suspended, and the world became a different place. So we can go further than Thomas. Adelstrop's no longer just the name, Adelstrop, but all the birds of Oxfordshire and Gloucestershire. Edward Thomas is no longer the guy on the train, but all the birds of Oxfordshire and Gloucestershire. Amitabha is particularly associated with the sense of hearing. In the song of the birds, there's no separation between them. Instead of separation, there is just the true intimacy of the open heart. That's what I think the poem illustrates, what it illustrates to me. So I'm sure we've all had moments in nature when we've suddenly been taken out of ourselves by a beautiful scene. We sort of forget ourselves and our concerns. In beauty, there's pleasure without grasping. In beauty, there's pleasure without grasping. We feel satisfied. We feel connected. We feel we've come home. There's a famous haiku by Basho, Japanese poet, another Japanese poet. Old pond, frog jumps in, the sound of water. Old pond, frog jumps in, the sound of water. Just that, the sound of water. Addlestock, Edward Thomas jumps in, the sound of the birds. There's just that, the sound of the birds. All the birds of Oxfordshire and Gloucestershire. We may be frightened of jumping in. We're jumping in to something that's unknown. We're jumping into the unknown. Who would I be without my craving? It's our craving that keeps us in the illusion of having a fixed and separate self. If we do away with the craving, we do away with a sense of fixed and separate self. If we truly jump in, all we lose is an illusion of separateness. So we can still sit on the train and eat a cheese sandwich, but then that's just sitting on the train eating a cheese sandwich. We don't make the mistake of imputing an ongoing entity that's doing it. Ongoing separate entity that's doing it. Separate from everybody else, everything else. So Edward Thomas, the name, Edward Thomas, the label, Edward Thomas, the idea, we could say, died in the trenches in April 1917. He belongs to time and place. Addlestock, the poem, is as fresh today as it was when it was written. It partakes of eternity. A nondescript railway station has become paradise. Ryokan again. My legacy, what will it be? Flowers in the spring, the cuckoo in summer, and the crimson maples of autumn. So the wisdom of Amitabha is called a discriminating awareness wisdom. And what this means is that we attend to each thing as it is, each person as they are, not the idea we have of them in our minds. Everybody is important. Everyone is unique and unrepeatable. If you know the film Schindler's List, you'll know that wonderful pivotal moment when Schindler comes up with a list of names of people he can save from the Holocaust. To the Nazis, the Jews were just anonymous vermin to be exterminated. But to Schindler, everyone had a name. Everyone was important. As we grow towards Amitabha, we become less prejudiced, less selective in our attention. We become interested in more kinds of people. Our whole world becomes more hospitable, more like the Pure Land in which Amitabha dwells. So what we do, we join Amitabha in meditation, sitting in meditation. He's sitting there cross-legged in meditation, his hands in the Dhyana Mudra. We might know that huge colossal image of Amitabha in Kamakura in Japan, the famous image of the Buddha sitting. It's a kind of huge bulk of figure. So we take our small pebble and we place it in relation to his infinite light, in relation to his unconditional love. And all we can notice the difference. For one thing, we can notice perhaps that when we meditate, we usually meditate because we want something. That's why we do it. Amitabha just meditates because he likes to meditate, because he loves it. It's just play to Amitabha. Enlightened beings just love to meditate. The Buddha loved to meditate. He didn't need to. He just loved to do it. It's what enlightened beings like to do. It's like he plays with meditation, plays with the universe, in fact, you could say. So meditating with him, we move towards a more connected way of being. And that's what love really is. We begin to experience the illusion of separateness as an illusion. We begin to realize that our intrinsic nature is infinite love. And we can only smile then really at how we've been so caught up in the illusion of appearances. And all there is then to do is to help others have the same realization, which is what the Buddha did after his enlightenment. He just went around helping other people have the same realization. Not that ultimately there are really any other separate beings that need our help. It's just the awakening mind meeting itself in different forms. So all of this, or some of this, might seem a bit puzzling. Amitabha is so huge, it's difficult to take in the immensity of what he embodies. It's difficult to take in the immensity of our own true nature. It's perhaps difficult to comprehend how we can become such boundless love. And in fact, it's really, we could say it's impossible to understand what we mean by infinite light, because if it was understood, it would be a concept. It would be a thing, it would be a concept, and we're not concerned with a concept. But what we're about here is essentially very simple. We move from needing love to being love. We realize that what we want, we already have. We move from an emotional hunger to inviting everyone to the banquet. And we can begin to do this simply by listening to the mantra of Amitabha, the heartbeat of enlightenment, revolving in our own hearts. Om Mami Deva Kri, Om Mami Deva Kri, and feel him meditating. There's a tradition in Japan that you don't call on Amitabha to save you, you call on him to thank him for already having done so. We're not seeking home, but realizing that we already are home, that we've never been anywhere else. Step by step, bit by bit, we absorb his light. Bit by bit, our heart opens. Step by step, we become perfumed by his infinite light. For what we contemplate, we become. What we contemplate, we become. So anyone can do this. It doesn't require any special aptitude. We don't have to have any special knowledge. We don't have to be perfect in any way. We don't have to be particularly spiritual, whatever that means. We don't have to know anything about enlightenment, especially, whatever that means. It doesn't cost us anything. It comes free from Amitabha, gratis. We can take it further if we wish. We can imagine others reciting the mantra with us, chanting the mantra with us. We can imagine our friends, people we don't particularly care about, our enemies even. We can imagine us all chanting the Amitabha mantra, all blessed by the love of Amitabha. So we can include the whole universe, blessed by Amitabha, all blessing each other. And then we have the world as interconnected. So at some point, we'll find ourselves emerging from the water, our petals unfolding. It's as though in the darkest depths somewhere a switch has been thrown and all the lights come on. Eventually, the pain of craving is transformed into the bliss of union. We've then gone from the darkness of samsara to the infinite light of Amitabha. So I'll finish with a poem by the American poet William Stafford, and then a final prayer. So this is called The Way It Is by William Stafford. The way it is, there's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but doesn't change. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread. But it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you can do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. Om Amitabha, may it be accomplished. The Vajra body is free from birth and death. The Vajra speech is a melodious song, unborn and unchanging. The Vajra mind is immutable and immortal throughout the three times. May I possess your completely pure, deathless body, speech, and mind. Amitabha, King of the drum of deathlessness, may I attain your body, speech, mind, qualities, and action. May practice in this life be fulfilled. May there be a great wave of blessings for the benefit of all beings.